They're probably stunned we're here, Kenya whispered. The violet hour's velvet shadows danced under Chicago's neon glow, jazz curling through the air. Tyler and Sophia clinked glasses in a secluded booth, their laughter a fragile facade. The curtain parted. Kenya, radiant in a red gown that burned like wildfire, stepped forward, every eye drawn to her. Logan, steadfast in his brown suit, flanked her, his gaze unyielding. Their eyes met, a silent pact sealed. Tyler's cocktail glass slipped, shattering on the floor. Sophia's smile froze, her hand trembling. Sophia, your late-night pitch? Logan's voice sliced through. Kenya faced Tyler, cool as steel. Congrats, darling. No seat for your wife? The booth became a stage, truth blazing brighter than their lies. What secrets will unravel next? Will Kenya and Logan's alliance hold? Stay to see betrayal's cost exposed. Kenya's fingers trembled as she adjusted the lens of her camera, the Chicago skyline sprawling before her like a canvas of dreams. The penthouse in River North buzzed with the hum of a city that never slept, its floor-to-ceiling windows framing the Willis Tower's jagged silhouette against a twilight sky. Her photographs lined the walls, vivid captures of Chicago's soul, a saxophone player's silhouette in Bronzeville. The beams mirrored curves under moonlight, a child's laughter frozen midair at Millennium Park. Each image was a love letter to the city she called home, but tonight they felt like relics of a life slipping through her fingers. She sat on a velvet armchair, her laptop glowing with a half-edited photo of a street vendor in Logan Square, his weathered hands cradling a steaming tamale. Kenya, a 35-year-old black photographer with a knack for bottling the city's raw pulse, had always found solace in her work. But now her heart thudded unevenly, like a jazz riff gone off-key. 7 years ago, she'd stood in this same penthouse, newly married to Tyler, a white tech consultant whose charm could light up the magnificent mile. They danced to Ella Fitzgerald under these very windows, his laughter weaving promises of a future filled with rooftop dinners and lakeside sunsets. "You're my muse, Kenya," he'd said, his eyes bright as the city lights. She'd believed him, her heart a shutter clicking open to capture every word. Now those words felt like ghosts. Tyler's absences had grown longer, his excuses sharper. "Client dinners," he'd say, his phone buzzing with lock notifications that he'd snatch away before she could glance at them. Tonight he was gone again, leaving behind a penthouse that felt too big, too quiet. Kenya's gaze drifted to a framed photo on the coffee table. Her and Tyler at Navy Pier, his arm around her, the Ferris wheel spinning behind them like a promise of forever. She reached for it, her fingers tracing his smile, but a pang twisted in her chest. Was that smile still hers? She stood, pacing to the window, the city's glow a kaleidoscope of hope and betrayal. Chicago had always been her anchor, its streets a tapestry of stories she wove into her art. But tonight, the city seemed to whisper secrets she wasn't ready to hear. She caught her reflection in the glass, her dark eyes searching for answers. The penthouse, once their sanctuary, now felt like a stage where something was amiss. Tyler's tie, discarded on the dining table, caught her eye. She lifted it, and a faint scent hit her. Not her jasmine perfume, but something sweeter, unfamiliar, like a stranger had slipped into their home. Her stomach churned, but she pressed the thought down, folding the tie as if it could fold away her doubts. Kenya returned to her laptop, trying to lose herself in the photo of the street vendor. She adjusted the contrast, but her hands shook, blurring the image. "Focus, Kenya," she murmured, her voice swallowed by the penthouse's silence. She'd always trusted Tyler's ambition, his late nights a testament to their shared dreams of a bigger life. But those dreams felt fragile now, like a photograph left too long in the sun. She remembered their last real moment together, a quiet dinner at a taco stand in Pilsen, where he'd laughed and stolen a bite of her elote. "You make everything better," he'd said. Had that been real or just another frame in a fading reel? Her phone pinged, snapping her from her thoughts. An Instagram notification from a colleague at Tyler's firm, tagged in a story. She hesitated, her thumb hovering over the screen. It was probably nothing, a work event, a team photo. But her heart raced, a premonition she couldn't shake. She didn't open it, not yet. Instead, she walked to the record player, slipping on a Billie Holiday vinyl. The mournful notes of Blue Moon filled the room, wrapping her in a melancholy embrace. She closed her eyes, picturing Tyler's face, his easy grin. But the image flickered, replaced by that unfamiliar scent, the locked phone, the empty penthouse. She sank onto the sofa, clutching a throw pillow, her mind a carousel of questions. Had she missed something? Was she reading shadows where there was only light? Kenya's photography had taught her to see the truth in fleeting moments, the joy in a stranger's glance, the ache in a bowed head. But with Tyler, she'd let herself blur the edges, softening the signs. The late nights, the curt replies, the way his touch had grown mechanical, like a habit rather than love. She'd told herself it was stress, that their love was a city that could weather any storm. But now doubt gnawed at her, sharp as the Chicago wind. She rose again, drawn to the window, the city's pulse mirroring her own. The river below wound through the skyscrapers, a silver thread tying her to Chicago's heart. She'd captured that river in 100 photos, each one a testament to her love for this city and the man she'd chosen here. But tonight, the river looked different, darker, as if it carried secrets too heavy to hold. Kenya pressed her hand to the glass, her breath fogging the surface. "What are you hiding, Tyler?" she whispered, her voice trembling like a shutter in a storm. The Instagram notification pinged again, insistent. Kenya's heart thudded, a drumbeat of dread. She didn't want to look, didn't want to shatter the fragile hope she clung to. But her fingers moved, almost against her will, opening the app. The screen glowed, and for a moment, she saw nothing but the city reflected in her eyes. She wasn't ready for what came next, but something inside her, a spark of the woman who'd built a life on capturing truth, knew she couldn't look away forever. Chicago's lights blinked back at her, steady and unyielding, as if urging her to see. Kenya's breath caught as she sat in the corner of Filter, a Wicker Park cafe where the scent of roasted coffee mingled with the faint hum of indie jazz from overhead speakers. The morning light spilled through tall windows, painting the brick walls in soft gold. But the warmth did nothing to thaw the chill in her chest. Her laptop glowed, open to a half-edited photo of a street dancer twirling under the L train tracks, her silhouette a burst of defiance against the city's grind. Kenya, a 35-year-old black photographer who could capture Chicago's heartbeat in a single frame, felt her own pulse falter. The Instagram notification from last night still lingered in her mind, a shadow she couldn't shake, like a crack in a lens distorting everything she saw. She sipped her latte, the foam trembling in her cup as her thoughts spiraled back to the penthouse, to Tyler's tie and its unfamiliar scent. 7 years of marriage had taught her to trust his ambition, his late-night client meetings, a necessary sacrifice for their dreams. But the locked phone, the curt excuses, the way his eyes dodged hers lately, they were details she couldn't blur, no matter how hard she tried. She adjusted the photo's contrast, but her fingers hovered over the keyboard, unsteady. "Get it together," she whispered, her voice lost in the cafe's chatter. Chicago had always been her muse, its streets a canvas where she painted truth. But now truth felt like a stranger knocking at her door. Her phone buzzed again, the same Instagram notification from Tyler's colleague, a junior analyst named Marcus, who always posted too much after a few drinks. Kenya's thumb hesitated, her heart a drum beat against her ribs. She didn't want to look, didn't want to face whatever lay behind that glowing icon. But her photographer's instinct, the part of her that chased raw moments, unfiltered and real, urged her on. She tapped the screen, and the world tilted. The photo loaded. Tyler, his white face lit with a grin she hadn't seen in months, raising a cocktail glass at the violet hour, a speakeasy tucked in Wicker Park's shadows. Beside him was Sophia, a white PR specialist from his firm, her blonde hair catching the lounge's dim light. The caption, sloppily typed, read, "Big win tonight," with a cascade of champagne emojis. Kenya's grip tightened, the phone trembling in her hand. Tyler's arm rested lightly on Sophia's shoulder, a gesture too intimate, too easy. Her eyes locked on a detail that cut deeper than the pose. A silver ring on Sophia's finger, its delicate twist mirroring a sketch Tyler had doodled on a napkin, during a date at Adler Planetarium. "Something special for you," he'd said, his pen tracing the design as stars glowed above them. Kenya's latte slipped from her other hand, splashing across the table, the brown liquid pooling like her spilling heart. A barista glanced over, concern in her eyes. "You okay, hon?" she asked, tossing a rag. Kenya nodded, mute, her gaze glued to the screen, as if staring could rewrite the image. She remembered Sophia from a company mixer at the Art Institute, her sharp wit and magnetic laugh commanding the room. Kenya had felt a flicker of unease then, watching Sophia lean close to Tyler, her hand brushing his as they talked. "Just work friends," Tyler had said later, his smile disarming. Kenya had believed him, letting the moment fade like an overexposed shot. But now that memory burned, sharp and unforgiving. She zoomed in on the photo, Sophia's ring glinting like a betrayal carved in metal. Her chest tightened, each breath a struggle, as if the cafe's air had thinned. "How could you?" she murmured, her voice a fragile thread. The jazz overhead shifted to a mournful saxophone, echoing the ache in her soul. Kenya's mind raced, piecing together fragments. Tyler's late nights, his guarded phone, the perfume on his tie. She'd framed their marriage as a masterpiece, each moment a perfect shot, but now the frame was splintering, revealing a truth she'd refused to see. She scrolled through Marcus's Instagram story, hoping for context, a group photo, a work event. But the next clip showed only Tyler and Sophia, laughing, their glasses clinking in a toast that excluded her. The caption, "Power couple vibes." Kenya's stomach lurched, the words a knife twisting in her gut. She pushed the laptop away, the street dancer's photo blurring on the screen. The cafe's chatter faded, replaced by a ringing in her ears. She thought of their last real night together, at a taco truck in Humboldt Park, where Tyler had fed her a bite of al pastor, his laugh warming the chilly night. "You're my home, Kenya," he'd said. Had that been a lie too? Her fingers brushed the phone, tempted to call him, to demand answers. But something stopped her, a spark of defiance, the same instinct that drove her to chase the perfect shot through Chicago's chaos. She needed more than his words. She needed the truth. Kenya opened her messages, scrolling to a contact she hadn't used in months. Logan, Sophia's fiancé, a white urban planner she'd met at a Chicago Cultural Center exhibit. They'd bonded over their love for the city's architecture, trading stories about the Rookery Building's soaring atrium and the vibrant murals of Pilsen. Logan had mentioned Sophia then, his eyes soft with pride. Did he know? Kenya's thumb hovered over his name, her heart pounding like the L train overhead. She typed, "Logan, we need to talk about Tyler and Sophia." Her finger paused, trembling, before hitting send. The message flew into the ether, a flare in the dark. She leaned back, the cafe's warmth now stifling. The saxophone wailed, a lament for the life she thought she knew. Chicago's streets pulsed outside, alive with stories she'd captured in her lens. Joy, struggle, resilience. But this story, her own, was unraveling, and she couldn't look away. The barista returned, wiping the spilled latte. "Rough day?" she asked. Kenya managed a faint smile, her voice barely above a whisper. "You could say that." She closed her laptop, the dancer's silhouette frozen in mid-twirl, a reminder of the freedom she'd once felt. Whatever came next, Kenya knew one thing. She'd face it like she faced her city, head on, lens sharp, ready to capture the truth, no matter how much it hurt. Kenya's heart pounded like the rumble of the L train as she sat in a dimly lit speakeasy in Bucktown, the air thick with the scent of aged whiskey and cedar. The bar's velvet curtains and flickering candles cast shadows that danced across the wooden table, mirroring the turmoil in her chest. She clutched her phone, the message to Logan. "We need to talk about Tyler and Sophia." Still glowing on the screen, sent 3 days ago after that shattering moment in the Wicker Park Cafe. Kenya, a 35-year-old black photographer who could freeze Chicago's soul in a single shot, felt her own soul fraying. The image of Tyler's arm around Sophia, her silver ring glinting like a stolen promise, burned behind her eyes, a photograph she couldn't unsee. She sipped a gin martini, the cold glass grounding her as she waited. The speakeasy, tucked behind an unmarked door on North Avenue, hummed with low voices and the clink of glasses, a secret haven in a city that held too many secrets. Kenya's fingers traced the edge of her coaster, her mind replaying the last week. Tyler's absence, his vague, "I'll be late" texts, the unfamiliar perfume on his tie. She'd spent those 3 days in a haze, her camera untouched, her penthouse a cage of memories. Every corner held a ghost, Tyler laughing over tacos in Humboldt Park, kissing her under the Navy Pier Ferris wheel. But now those memories felt like lies, each one a crack in the frame of their 7-year marriage. The door creaked and Logan stepped in, his white face pale under the candlelight, his eyes hollowed by sleepless nights. Kenya recognized him instantly from their meeting at a Chicago Cultural Center exhibit, where they'd bonded over Frank Lloyd Wright's geometric genius in the vibrant murals of Pilsen. Logan, a soft-spoken urban planner, had spoken of Sophia with a quiet pride, his love for her as solid as the city's steel. Now that pride was gone, replaced by a raw ache that mirrored Kenya's own. He slid into the booth, his shoulders slumped, a glass of bourbon in hand. "Kenya," he said, his voice low, "I got your message. I think I know why." She nodded, her throat tight. "I saw them," she said, her words sharp as a shutter's click. "On Instagram. Tyler and Sophia at the Violet Hour, toasting like they owned the world." She slid her phone across the table, the photo loading, a frozen moment of betrayal. Logan's jaw tightened as he stared at Tyler's grin, Sophia's ring catching the light. "That ring," he said, his voice breaking like glass. "I designed it for her, for our anniversary. I found it in her jewelry box, untouched, like it meant nothing." His fingers curled into a fist, the bourbon trembling in his glass. Kenya's chest ached, as if her heart were a lens struggling to focus. "Tyler sketched that ring for me," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Years ago, at Adler Planetarium. Said it was for something special." The memory stung, Tyler's pen dancing on a napkin, his eyes bright under the starlit dome. She'd framed that moment in her mind, a perfect shot of love. Now it was tainted, overexposed by Sophia's presence. Logan's eyes met hers, and for a moment, they were no longer strangers but survivors, bound by a shared wound. "She told me she was working late," he said, his voice heavy. "Pitching to clients. I believed her." The jazz from the speakers turned mournful, a saxophone's wail echoing their pain. Kenya leaned forward, her dark eyes searching Logan's. "I believed Tyler, too," she said, her voice cracking. "His late nights, his locked phone. I told myself it was for us, for our future." She laughed, a bitter sound, like a shutter jamming. "But he was building a future with her." The words cut deep, each syllable a shard of glass. She thought of her photos lining the penthouse walls, each one a testament to her love for Chicago and Tyler. Now they felt like evidence of her blindness, a gallery of missed signs. Logan swirled his bourbon, staring into the amber liquid as if it held answers. "Sophia used to sketch city plans with me," he said, his voice distant. "We'd sit in Grant Park, dreaming up plazas, bridges. She said I was her foundation." He shook his head, a ghost of a smile fading. "Now she's wearing my ring with him." Kenya reached out, her hand hovering, then resting lightly on his. "We didn't see it coming," she said, her voice steadying. "But we see it now." The touch was brief, a spark of solidarity in the dim light. The speakeasy's shadows seemed to close in, the candles flickering like their fragile resolve. Kenya's mind raced, her photographer's instinct kicking in. She needed to capture this moment, not with a camera, but with action. "They think they can hide in Chicago's shadows," she said, her voice rising, a fire kindling within. "But this city doesn't keep secrets forever." Logan looked up, his eyes sharpening. "What are you saying?" he asked. Kenya leaned closer, her gaze fierce. "I'm saying we show them the light. Together." Her words hung between them, a vow as solid as the city's skyline. Logan's jaw set, a flicker of determination breaking through his pain. "I'm in," he said, his voice low but firm. "They don't get to rewrite our stories." Kenya felt a surge, like the click of a perfect shot. The saxophone wailed on, but now it sounded less like a lament and more like a call to arms. She thought of Chicago's streets, resilient and unyielding, a city that thrived despite its scars. She and Logan were part of that city, and they would not break. The bartender glanced over, sensing the shift in their booth. Kenya pulled her hand back, her heart still racing, but no longer lost. "We'll meet again," she said, her voice steady as a tripod. "To figure out how." Logan nodded, draining his bourbon. "For the truth," he said, a vow of his own. Kenya stood, the speakeasy's warmth wrapping around her like a promise. She stepped into the night, Chicago's lights blazing, ready to guide her toward whatever came next. The violet hour's velvet curtains parted, revealing a world of whispered secrets and flickering candlelight. Jazz notes curled through the air, a sultry saxophone weaving around the clink of cocktail glasses in the Wicker Park speakeasy. Kenya's heart thundered like Chicago's L train as she stood at the threshold, her breath catching in her chest. Days after her pact with Logan in the Bucktown bar, the weight of their shared betrayal pressed against her ribs, a storm ready to break. Kenya, a 35-year-old black photographer whose lens captured the city's raw soul, felt her own soul ablaze with resolve and pain. She'd spent those days replaying Tyler's smile in that damning Instagram photo, Sophia's silver ring glinting like a stolen vow. Tonight they would face the truth, no matter how it burned. She glanced at Logan, his white face taut with quiet fury, his eyes reflecting the same fire that fueled her. Their plan, forged in the speakeasy's shadows, was simple. No screams, no chaos, just the raw exposure of Tyler and Sophia's lies. The lounge hummed with oblivious patrons, their laughter a stark contrast to the reckoning ahead. Kenya smoothed her red gown, its fitted bodice hugging her frame, the flared skirt cascading with a bow and intricate draping, a blaze of elegance that turned heads. Logan, beside her, stood resolute in his tailored brown suit, his presence a steady anchor. Their eyes met, a silent vow passing between them, as if Chicago's skyline itself urged them forward. The booth where Tyler and Sophia sat was tucked in a corner, its velvet cushions a throne for their secret world. Tyler, white and charismatic in a black suit, raised a cocktail glass, his laugh echoing with a confidence that once made Kenya's heart soar. Sophia, white and radiant, leaned close, her blonde hair catching the candlelight, her laughter a melody that masked deceit. Kenya's chest tightened, the memory of Tyler's arm around Sophia in that photo searing her mind. She thought of their nights at Adler Planetarium, his promise of a ring just for her. Now that promise adorned another's hand, a betrayal sharper than any lens could capture. Kenya's heels clicked on the polished wood floor, each step a heartbeat echoing her resolve. Logan matched her stride, his jaw set, his fingers brushing the pocket where he kept the silver ring he'd reclaimed from Sophia's jewelry box. The lounge's chatter faded as they approached, a ripple of curiosity spreading among nearby patrons. Tyler's glass froze midair, his eyes widening as they locked on Kenya. The color drained from his face, his confident grin crumbling like a poorly timed shot. Sophia's laugh caught in her throat, her hand clutching her glass so tightly it trembled. "Kenya," Tyler stammered, his voice a fragile thread. "What are you?" Logan spoke first, his voice slicing through the jazz like a cold wind off Lake Michigan. "Sophia, is this your late-night pitch?" His words were calm but razor-sharp, each syllable a wound. Sophia's smile faltered, her eyes darting between Logan and the ring on her finger, the one she thought she'd worn unnoticed. "Logan, she started, her voice cracking, a desperate attempt to salvage her facade. Kenya stepped closer, her gaze piercing Tyler's. "Congrats on the deal, darling," she said, her tone smooth as steel. "But it seems you forgot to save a seat for your wife." The booth became a stage, the candlelight casting their shadows like players in a tragedy. Logan reached into his pocket, pulling out the silver ring he'd designed for Sophia, its delicate twist gleaming under the dim light. He placed it on the table, the soft ting echoing like a gavel's strike. "This belongs to your lies," he said, his voice low but unwavering, his eyes never leaving Sophia's. Her hand flew to her mouth, a gasp escaping as she stared at the ring, her composure unraveling like a dropped reel of film. Tyler tried to stand, his chair scraping the floor. "Kenya, let me explain," he pleaded, his voice hoarse, his eyes searching for an escape that didn't exist. Kenya raised a hand, silencing him, her presence commanding the room like a perfectly framed shot. "No excuses, Tyler," she said, her voice steady despite the storm in her heart. "We see you now." She turned to the booth, addressing only them, her words clear and cutting. "Love isn't a game. It breaks." A few patrons nearby paused, their glasses hovering, whispers rippling like waves on the Chicago River. Sophia's eyes filled with tears, her attempt at a smile collapsing into a grimace. "Logan, it's not what you think," she whispered. But her voice lacked conviction, her charm shattered. Tyler's hands shook, his gaze darting to the ring, then to Kenya, as if realizing the frame of his life had just splintered. Kenya's heart pounded, a mix of fury and liberation. She thought of her photographs, each one a truth she'd chased through Chicago's streets. This moment was her truth, raw and unfiltered, a shot she'd never wanted to take but couldn't avoid. Logan stood firm, his pain etched in the lines of his face, but his resolve unshaken. The jazz swelled, a saxophone's wail underscoring the weight of their stand. Kenya felt the city's pulse in her veins, its resilience fueling her own. She didn't need Tyler's explanations, didn't need Sophia's tears. She had the truth, and it was enough. Sophia pushed back her chair, her movements frantic, fleeing toward the bar as if distance could erase her shame. Tyler sat frozen, his charm reduced to ash, alone in the booth that had been their sanctuary. Kenya and Logan exchanged a glance, their alliance a quiet strength. They turned, walking back through the curtains, the lounge's murmurs trailing them like a fading echo. Chicago's lights glittered outside, a constellation of possibilities. Kenya felt a spark ignite within her, not of vengeance, but of something fiercer, herself reclaimed. Kenya's heels echoed on the cobblestones of Ukrainian village, each step a pulse against the quiet Chicago night. The city's skyline loomed in the distance, its lights flickering like stars struggling to shine through a storm. Her heart still raced from the confrontation at the Violet Hour, where she and Logan had stripped Tyler and Sophia bare, their lies shattered like the glass Tyler dropped. Kenya, a 35-year-old black photographer who captured Chicago's raw truths, felt her own truth trembling within her, a fragile mix of triumph and devastation. The weight of her words to Tyler, sharp as a blade, lingered in her chest, a wound that both burned and freed her. She walked toward the apartment of her friend Marta, a temporary refuge in a vibrant neighborhood of colorful murals and buzzing taquerias. The air carried the faint scent of grilled corn and the distant strum of a street guitarist. But Kenya's mind was elsewhere, replaying the booth's candlelit shadows, Sophia's trembling lips, Tyler's pleading eyes. She'd stood tall, her voice steady, but now, alone under the city's glow, her knees threatened to buckle. 7 years of marriage, nights at Navy Pier, tacos in Humboldt Park, had unraveled in a single moment. She clutched her purse, the weight of her phone inside it a reminder of Tyler's calls, already flooding her voicemail. She wouldn't listen, not yet. His voice, once her anchor, now felt like a chain she'd broken free from. Kenya paused under a mural of a soaring phoenix, its fiery wings painted across a brick wall. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd burned her old life tonight, but the ashes still stung her eyes. She thought of her photographs, each one a frame of love for Tyler and Chicago. Had she been blind, editing out the flaws in their story? Her fingers itched for her camera, a reflex to capture this moment, to make sense of the chaos. But her hands stayed still, her heart too raw to focus. "I saw you, Tyler," she whispered, her breath fogging in the cool air. "And I'm not invisible anymore." Across the city, in Edgewater, Logan sat on his balcony overlooking Lake Michigan, the water's dark expanse swallowing the city's lights. His white face, usually calm, was etched with exhaustion, his hands wrapped around a coffee mug gone cold. The Violet Hour's confrontation played in his mind like a film stuck on repeat. Sophia's faltering smile, the silver ring he'd placed on the table, its ting, a final note in their love song. As an urban planner who designed Chicago's public spaces, Logan had built his life on structure, on plans that held firm. Sophia had been his cornerstone, her laughter the blueprint for their future. Now that blueprint was ash, and his heart felt like a construction site abandoned mid-build. He pulled out his phone, ignoring Sophia's frantic texts. "Logan, let me explain," and deleted them with a steady thumb. He'd ended their engagement with a single message, sent as he left the lounge. "We're done." The words felt final, like signing off on a project he'd poured his soul into, only to see it collapse. He thought of Kenya, her fierce gaze in the booth, her words cutting through the jazz. She'd been a stranger days ago, but tonight she was an ally, her pain a mirror to his own. He typed a message to her. "You okay? That took guts." His thumb hovered, then pressed a send, a lifeline thrown into the night. Kenya reached Marta's apartment, a cozy third-floor walk-up adorned with vibrant textiles and the smell of fresh tamales. Marta, a painter with a laugh as bright as her canvases, opened the door, her eyes softening at Kenya's expression. "You look like you've been through hell," she said, pulling Kenya into a hug. Kenya sank into it, her shoulders trembling, the weight of the night crashing down. "I faced him," she said, her voice muffled. "Tyler, with her." Marta led her to the couch, pouring a glass of red wine. "Tell me," she said. And Kenya did, the words spilling like a roll of film unspooling. Tyler's betrayal, Sophia's ring. The booth turned stage. Her voice broke as she described Tyler's face, pale and desperate, his charm crumbling like a facade on a condemned building. "I wanted him to hurt," she admitted, tears brimming, "but it hurts me more." Marta squeezed her hand, her silence a steady presence. Kenya sipped the wine, its warmth grounding her. She thought of her photos lining the penthouse, each one a lie she'd framed as love. But tonight she'd framed the truth, and it was hers to keep. "I'm not his muse anymore," she said, her voice steadying. "I'm my own." In Edgewater, Logan stood, the lake's breeze sharp against his skin. He thought of Sophia, her laughter at Grant Park, their dreams of a life built together. Those dreams were gone, replaced by the sting of her lies. But Kenya's strength in the lounge had sparked something in him, a resolve to rebuild, not for Sophia, but for himself. He pulled out a sketch pad, drawing the outline of a plaza in Uptown, a space for music and light. The lines were shaky, but they were his, a first step out of the rubble. He glanced at his phone, Kenya's reply lighting the screen. "Still standing. You?" He smiled, faint but real, and typed, "Same. Chicago's got our back." Kenya curled up on Marta's couch, the city's lights filtering through the window, painting the room in golden shadow. She thought of her camera, left in her bag, its lens a witness to her pain. She'd always chased Chicago's stories, street vendors, musicians, lovers under bridges. Now her own story was unfolding, raw and unscripted. The Phoenix mural flashed in her mind, its wings a promise of rebirth. She'd faced Tyler, seen him for what he was. The pain was a fire, but it was hers to wield. She closed her eyes, the city's pulse syncing with her own, whispering that she was enough. Logan leaned against his balcony railing, the lake stretching before him like a canvas of possibilities. Chicago's skyline stood tall, unyielding, a reminder that even broken things could rise. He and Kenya had lit a match tonight, burning away the lies. The ashes were heavy, but beneath them, something new stirred. A strength he hadn't known he had. He sketched another line, the plaza taking shape, and felt the city breathe with him. Kenya's fingers grazed the shutter button of her camera. The lens pointed at a mural of a soaring hawk splashed across a Ukrainian village storefront. The morning sun bathed Chicago's streets in gold, the neighborhood's vibrant pulse, taquerias sizzling, kids laughing over hopscotch, stirring something fragile in her heart. Kenya, a 35-year-old black photographer whose art captured the city's untamed spirit, felt the weight of the Violet Hour confrontation like a bruise that hadn't faded. Tyler's shattered expression, Sophia's fleeing silhouette, and the silver ring's damning ting haunted her. But the city's hum whispered a new possibility. She could rebuild. At Marta's apartment, her temporary haven, she'd lain awake, the phoenix mural from that night walk flashing in her mind, its fiery wings urging her to rise. She adjusted her camera, framing the hawk's piercing eyes against the mural's electric blues. Each click felt like a heartbeat, a tentative step back to herself. The confrontation had stripped her bare, exposing 7 years of marriage as a lie. Tyler's voicemails, piling up unanswered, were a chorus of excuses she refused to hear. His voice, once her melody, now grated like a scratched vinyl. She thought of their nights under Navy Pier's lights, his promises of forever. Those memories stung, but they no longer owned her. "I'm not your frame anymore, Tyler," she murmured, her breath misting in the cool air. The hawk in her lens stared back, fierce and free, as if daring her to soar. Across the city in a sleek office in the Loop, Logan hunched over a drafting table, his pencil sketching the curves of a plaza in Uptown. The white urban planner's hands trembled slightly, the ache of Sophia's betrayal still raw. The violet hour's candlelight had illuminated her lies, her trembling denial echoing in his ears. He'd deleted her texts, each one a plea he couldn't trust, and sent that final message ending their engagement. The ring he'd placed on the table was a line drawn in the sand, severing a future he'd built in his mind. Logan's designs had always been his refuge, bridges and parks that shaped Chicago's soul. Now they were his lifeline, a way to piece himself back together. He sketched a stage for the plaza, imagining jazz musicians playing under starlight, a nod to the city's heartbeat. The lines were shaky, his heart still heavy with Sophia's laughter at Grant Park, her promises now ash. But Kenya's fierce stand in the lounge, her words cutting through the jazz, had lit a spark in him. She'd faced her pain head-on, and he wanted to do the same. He glanced at his phone. Kenya's message from that night. Still standing. You. Still glowing in his memory. He typed a reply. Trying to rebuild. Coffee soon? His finger hovered, then pressed send, a small bridge to something new. Kenya wandered to Division Street, her camera capturing a vendor arranging marigolds outside a bodega, their orange petals vivid against the gray pavement. The shutter's click steadied her, each photo a reclaiming of her vision. She'd left her camera untouched for days, the pain of Tyler's betrayal dulling her lens. But today the city called her back. Its colors, its chaos, its resilience. She thought of Marta's hug, her friend's quiet strength anchoring her through tears. "You're stronger than you know," Marta had said, pouring wine as Kenya poured out her heart. That strength was stirring now, fragile but growing, like a photo developing in a darkroom. She paused at a street corner, a boy's laughter catching her ear as he chased a soccer ball. She snapped a shot, his joy frozen mid-stride, a reminder of what she'd lost and what she could find. Tyler's lies had shattered her frame, but Chicago's streets were a canvas where she could paint again. Her phone buzzed, Logan's message. She smiled faintly, typing, "Coffee sounds good. Name the place." The reply was a tether, connecting her to someone who understood her wounds. She didn't need Tyler's apologies or his empty promises. She needed this. The city, her art, a chance to start anew. In the Loop, Logan stepped back from his sketch, the plaza's stage taking shape under his pencil. He imagined families gathering, music echoing, Chicago's spirit alive in every note. Sophia had been his muse, her sketches once gracing his desk, but now her absence was a blank page, and he was ready to draw without her. Kenya's courage had shown him that, her unflinching gaze in the lounge, her voice a beacon through the fog. He thought of their talk in Bucktown, their shared love for Chicago's architecture, its murals, its grit. That connection, born in pain, was a foundation he could build on. He walked to his office window, the Chicago River glinting below, its surface a mirror of possibility. He'd always designed spaces to bring people together, plazas, bridges, parks. Now he was designing a new space for himself, one where Sophia's shadow couldn't reach. His phone lit up with Kenya's reply, and he felt a flicker of warmth, like sunlight breaking through clouds. "Filter tomorrow?" he typed, naming the Wicker Park Cafe where Kenya had faced her truth. It felt right, a place to start over. Kenya stood before the bodega, the vendor smiling as she showed him the photo. "That's my shop," he said, his pride infectious. Kenya laughed, the sound foreign but welcome, like a shutter clicking after a long pause. She thought of her penthouse, now a relic of a life she'd left behind. Tyler's voicemails were a weight she could ignore, his words no longer her focus. She'd spent years framing their love, but now she was reframing herself. The hawk mural flashed in her mind, its wings a call to rise. She slipped her camera into her bag, the city's pulse syncing with her own, urging her forward. Logan tucked his sketch pad away, the plaza's lines a promise to himself. Chicago's skyline stood tall outside, its steel and glass a testament to endurance. He thought of Kenya, her camera capturing truths he was learning to see. The pain of Sophia's betrayal lingered, but it was no longer his blueprint. He was drafting something new, and for the first time it felt like his own. The river below shimmered, reflecting a city that never gave up. Neither would he. Kenya walked back to Marta's, the marigold's glow lingering in her mind. She'd lost Tyler, but she hadn't lost herself. Chicago's streets, with their stories of struggle and joy, were hers to capture. She felt a spark, not yet a flame, but enough to light her way. The city's rhythm carried her, a melody of resilience she was ready to follow. Kenya's camera hung heavy around her neck as she stood on a Pilsen sidewalk, the neighborhood's murals blazing under the midday sun. The vibrant swirls of color, turquoise jaguars, crimson roses, seemed to pulse with Chicago's heartbeat, a rhythm that was slowly syncing with her own. Kenya, a 35-year-old black photographer whose lens had once framed her love for Tyler, now felt that lens turning inward, capturing fragments of a self she was piecing back together. The Violet Hour confrontation, with its shattering glass and searing words, lingered like a photograph burned into her mind. But the pain, once a gaping wound, was knitting into something else. A quiet strength, fragile but growing, like a mural painted over cracked brick. She aimed her camera at a street vendor weaving a paleta cart through the crowd, his call of "Mango Limon," a melody against the hum of 18th Street. The shutter clicked, freezing his weathered smile, and Kenya felt a spark, the first flicker of joy since that night. Tyler's voicemails had stopped, his silence a relief and a sting. She'd left them unanswered, each one a tether she'd cut to free herself from the penthouse, from 7 years of promises now ash. Her temporary home at Marta's in Ukrainian village, with its warm textiles and tamale-scented evenings, had given her space to breathe. But it was Chicago's streets, raw, resilient, that were stitching her heart back together. She thought of Logan, the white urban planner whose pain had mirrored hers in that Bucktown speakeasy. Their pact, forged in shared betrayal, had carried them through the lounge's candlelit reckoning. His text last night, "Filter tomorrow," had been a lifeline, a promise of connection beyond their wounds. Kenya had wandered these streets since her camera captured the city's pulse. A child's chalk drawing on a stoop, a guitarist strumming in a taqueria's doorway. Each shot was a reclaiming, a way to see herself anew. "This is mine," she whispered, framing the vendor's cart against a mural's fiery reds. The city answered, its vibrancy a mirror to her own. In Uptown, Logan stood on a construction site, the skeleton of his plaza project rising against Chicago's skyline. Dust swirled around him, the clank of hammers echoing like a heartbeat. His white face, once shadowed by Sophia's betrayal, now carried a flicker of purpose. The Violet Hour's confrontation, her trembling denial, the ring's damning ting, still cut deep, but the pain was no longer his architect. He deleted her final text, a weak "I'm sorry," and let it sink into the void. Sophia had been his blueprint, her laughter shaping his designs. Now he was drafting alone, and the lines felt truer. He sketched a curved bench for the plaza, envisioning families laughing under string lights, a nod to Chicago's jazz-soaked nights. The pencil steadied in his hand, each stroke a defiance of the emptiness. Sophia left. Kenya's courage in the lounge, her voice slicing through the lies, had sparked something in him, a resolve to build not just spaces, but himself. Their brief exchange, still standing, "You?" had grown into a plan to meet, a bridge between their fractured worlds. He glanced at his phone, Kenya's reply. Coffee sounds good. A small warmth in the construction dust. He wanted to share his plaza, to show her he was rising too. Kenya moved through Pilsen, her lens catching a girl painting a mural, her brush dancing across a wall. The click of the shutter felt like a heartbeat, each photo a step away from Tyler's shadow. She thought of their nights at Adler Planetarium, his promises now a blurred frame. Marta's words echoed, "You're stronger than you know." Kenya had cried then, the weight of her loss overwhelming. But now, capturing the girl's vibrant strokes, she felt that strength stirring, like light breaking through a dark room's gloom. She'd submitted a photo to a contest at the Chicago Cultural Center, a shot of a street preacher in Bronzeville, his passion blazing. It was a risk, a step toward reclaiming her art, and it felt like freedom. Logan walked the construction site, his boots crunching gravel. The plaza's stage was taking shape, a space for music and stories, inspired by Chicago's grit. He thought of Sophia, her sketches once cluttering his desk, now gone. But Kenya's fire in the lounge, her unflinching stand, had shown him a new blueprint. He wanted to design spaces that lasted, like the city itself. His phone buzzed, a confirmation from the city for plaza funding. He smiled, faint but real, and typed to Kenya, "Filter, noon, I've got news." The message was a spark, a connection he hadn't expected but welcome. Kenya paused at a taqueria, the scent of carne asada pulling her in. She snapped a photo of the cook flipping tortillas, his hands a blur of skill. The owner grinned, offering her a taco. "For the artist," he said, and Kenya laughed, the sound bright and surprising, like a shutter opening after too long. She thought of Logan, his quiet resolve in Bucktown, his pain a mirror to hers. Their coffee tomorrow wasn't just a meeting, it was a step towards something new, a friendship born in fire. Tyler's betrayal had shattered her, but Chicago's streets, with their endless stories, were reminding her who she was. Logan stood by a half-built bench, sketching a mural idea for the plaza. A hawk, like the one Kenya might photograph, soaring over the city. He remembered their talk of Pilsen's murals, her passion for capturing truth. Sophia's lies had unraveled his plans, but Kenya's strength had shown him he could rebuild. The city's skyline gleamed, its steel a promise of endurance. He felt a stir, not yet whole but enough to keep going. His pencil moved, the hawk's wings taking flight, a symbol of what he could become. Kenya ate the taco, the flavors bursting like the murals around her. She thought of her penthouse, now a distant memory, and Tyler's voicemails, now silenced. Her camera felt lighter, a tool not just for capturing Chicago, but for seeing herself. The girl painting the mural waved, her smile a spark of connection. Kenya waved back, her heart lifting, like a photo coming into focus. Chicago's rhythm pulsed through her, a song of resilience she was learning to sing. Kenya stood in the heart of Pilsen, her camera raised to capture a mural of a woman dancing under a cascade of stars, the paint glowing against the brick like a beacon in the dusk. Chicago's pulse thrummed through the neighborhood, taquerias sizzling, mariachi music spilling from open windows, the laughter of families weaving through the evening air. Kenya, a 35-year-old black photographer who once framed her life around Tyler's promises, now felt her heart align with the city's rhythm. The Violet Hour confrontation, with its shattered glass and raw truth, was a scar that still ached, but the wound was healing, stitched together by her art in the city she loved. The street preacher's photo from her contest submission had won her a spotlight at a gallery show, and tonight she stood on the cusp of reclaiming herself. She clicked the shutter, the mural's stars frozen in her lens, each one a spark of her own resilience. Tyler's silence had replaced his voicemails, a quiet that felt like freedom after the storm of his betrayal. She'd left the penthouse behind, its memories of Navy Pier nights and Humboldt Park tacos, now relics of a life she no longer needed. Marta's apartment in Ukrainian Village, with its vibrant textiles, had been a sanctuary, but Pilsen's streets, alive with color and defiance, were her true home. She thought of Logan, the white urban planner whose pain had mirrored hers in that Bucktown speakeasy. Their coffee meeting at Filter, planned after their first steps toward healing, had deepened a bond forged in fire. His plaza in Uptown, a vision of jazz and light, was a testament to his own rise from Sophia's ashes. Kenya lowered her camera, her dark eyes reflecting the mural's glow. The contest win, a photo of a preacher's passion blazing in Bronzeville, had been a lifeline, proof that her art could shine without Tyler's shadow. She'd cried when she got the news, not from pain, but from a joy that felt like a shutter opening wide. "This is me," she whispered, her voice steady against the evening breeze. The mural's dancing woman seemed to nod, her painted stars a map to Kenya's own light. She thought of Tyler's face in the lounge, pale and pleading, and Sophia's trembling denial. That moment had broken her, but it had also set her free, like a photograph finally developed after years in the dark. In Uptown, Logan walked through his half-built plaza, the scent of fresh concrete mingling with the city's evening hum. The white urban planner's hands traced the edge of a stone bench, its surface cool under his touch. The Violet Hour's confrontation, Sophia's crumbling facade, the ring's accusing ting, still echoed, but the pain was no longer his architect. He'd ignored her final email, a weak attempt at closure, and let it vanish into the void. Sophia had been his blueprint, her laughter shaping his designs for a shared future. Now that future was his alone, and he was building it with every line he drew. The plaza's stage, meant for jazz and stories, was nearly complete, a space where Chicago's heart could sing. He paused, sketching a final detail, a small plaque for the bench, etched with "Chicago Endures." Kenya's fire in the lounge, her unflinching words, had shown him what endurance looked like. Their coffee at Filter had been a revelation, not just shared pain, but shared dreams of a city that never gave up. Kenya's photo of the preacher had inspired him, its raw truth echoing his own. He pulled out his phone, her message from yesterday. "Proud of your plaza. Gallery tonight?" Warming him like the city's lights, he typed back, "I'll be there. Can't wait to see your work." His fingers steadied, the sketch complete, a promise to himself and the city. Kenya walked to the gallery, a small space on 18th Street, where her photo hung among others, its Bronzeville preacher glowing under soft lights. The crowd buzzed. Artists, locals, critics, their voices a hum of admiration. Kenya's heart swelled, a mix of pride and vulnerability. She'd poured her soul into that photo, capturing a man's faith against a backdrop of struggle. It was her, too, her faith, her fight. She thought of Marta's words, "You're stronger than you know." That strength had carried her through the lounge, through the pain of Tyler's betrayal. Now it carried her here, where her art spoke louder than his lies. Logan arrived, his eyes scanning the gallery until they found Kenya. He smiled, a quiet warmth breaking through his usual reserve. "Your photo," he said, nodding at the preacher. "It's alive." Kenya laughed, the sound bright and unburdened. "Yours too," she said, picturing his plaza. They stood before her work, their shoulders brushing, a friendship forged in truth. Kenya spotted Sophia across the room, her white face strained as she pitched to a critic, her charm dimmed. Kenya felt a flicker of pity, but it passed like a cloud. "She's just a shadow now," she said softly, her eyes on Logan. He nodded, understanding. So is he. The gallery's lights cast their faces in gold, Chicago's spirit alive in the room. Kenya thought of her camera, her lens capturing the city's soul. Vendors, musicians, dreamers. Tyler had been a frame she'd clung to, but now she was her own canvas. Logan's plaza, with its stage and plaque, was his canvas too. They'd faced their pain, burned away the lies, and found something stronger. "To Chicago," Kenya said, raising an imaginary glass. Logan mirrored her, his smile genuine. "To us," he said, his voice a vow. Kenya stepped outside, the Pilsen night wrapping around her like a song. The murals glowed, the stars above echoing their painted twins. She felt whole, not because the pain was gone, but because she'd claimed it, shaped it into something beautiful. Her camera rested in her bag, ready for the next frame. Logan joined her, the city's lights stretching before them, a constellation of resilience. They didn't need Tyler or Sophia to shine. Chicago, with its unyielding heart, had shown them that. Kenya and Logan's journey through Chicago's vibrant streets, from betrayal's sting to resilience's glow, shows that truth can shatter, but it also rebuilds. Their story, painted against the city's unyielding skyline, is a testament to finding light in the darkest frames. What did their courage spark in you? Did Kenya's fire or Logan's quiet strength resonate? Share your thoughts. Your voice matters, just as theirs did. Thank you for walking these streets with us, for feeling every pulse of pain and triumph. Chicago's heart beats on, and so will ours. Come back for another story where the city's soul meets yours.